Well, I figured I'd do this. I was listening to a video yesterday done by Sane Amongst Insanity over here on YouTube, and concerning Mr. Hoca, and he was doing a rebuttal or reply to Mr. Hoca, and I listened to it. It was a two-parter because his phone dropped out or what have you, but just the same, I listened to both parts. He played Steve's words and then answered the question to Steve. He done it very fairly. He didn't go into anti-harmony attacks or slam Steve in any way at all. He was very fair, and not only was Sane saying very fair with Steve, he stayed on point, and the stuff he said was very correct. Very correct. Staying insane amongst insanity isn't. He didn't do anything wrong here. I mean, seriously. He was stayed on point, and he was correct about what he said. I think the only thing that I would say about him going overseas, you know, it appears that Sane amongst insanity is a pharmacist, okay? Which is awesome. I mean, the guy's got himself a good paying career and seems to be doing pretty well for himself. And it is true that our society, thanks to the social engineering of our society, for neons now, people are going by looks. I said that years ago, and I'll never go back on that because that's exactly what it is. Looks, status, money, the tool. And for a guy to stand a chance, you have to be, you know, you have to fit into certain characteristics of what our society has dictated for us. It's sad it shouldn't be this way. This is social engineering at its finest. It isn't the women that are suffering here, it is actually the men. There are a lot of men that can't even get nobody in their lives. But what Sane is saying amongst insanity talked about was absolutely correct. Okay, and for guys that choose to go overseas to get somebody, I think the only thing that Sane is saying probably left out of that was the fact that you better be well to do financially. I'm not talking about filthy rich, but you better have a good income. You better have good credit. That's right. You better have good credit, you better have good income, and you better have some money put up. Because there's nothing cheap about going overseas to pick up a dame. If you're going overseas, the Philippines, I'll use the Philippines for an example. I actually went to the Philippines myself. Okay? So I know already from my experience of going there and checking into this stuff through Homeland Security, believe it or not. And it's a process. I mean, you've got to go over there, you got to meet her in person. You got to keep your airline tickets, proof that you've actually met her in person, pictures, what have you. Okay, then you have to go through your paperwork process. She has to go through a medical exam and an interview at the embassy. That's right, and she has to be approved. You have to go through the paperwork, the process of a credit check and your bank records being checked and all this good stuff. And when it's all said and done, you're still going to probably spend on the upwards of 10 to 15 grand, unless you get lucky. Depending on what you're bringing, it really depends probably on individual cases because if you're bringing somebody over that's already got kids, of course, that's going to cost more. If you're bringing somebody over that don't got children to create a family of your own, that's great, that's awesome. Probably be a little less expensive. But regardless of what, it's still going to be expensive. There's no way around that. You've got to have money. Okay, and what they consider successful in today's society means you're going to have good income. You're going to have good income, okay? There's no ifs, ands about it. And if you're the average Joe that don't have a good income behind you, then I wouldn't worry about going overseas. If you got bad credit, I wouldn't worry about going overseas. It's a lot of things that people don't realize about getting somebody here from overseas. That is time consuming, costs a lot of money. Okay, it really does. because they have to be interviewed at the embassy. You have to be checked out. Your background has to be checked out. Theirs is going to be checked out. They got to have a medical examination. All of this stuff costs money. Okay, and you got to get the approval. I mean, it's a time consuming, a lot of paperwork, a lot of hassle process. You don't hear people talking about. Staying sane, mostly sanity, I guess, from what I hear, he's got himself a Filipino wife. Now, I'm not going to say he does for sure. I'm going by what I've heard. Now, I'm not saying that's accurate. Only he can answer that. Now, it doesn't matter to me if he has himself a Filipino wife, but I'll tell you what. If he does have a Filipino wife, as I've heard, if that is true, he would be the man that could answer your questions. To what do you do? What steps do you have to take if you meet somebody in the Philippines? And then I'd have to exercise to tell you take caution with who you meet. I think Sane has also said that because there's lots of scammers out here, including in the Philippines. My scare is you get the Filipino girl over here. She's good. Her culture, like the gal I was seeing was a school teacher. Her name was Religia, and I had landed in what was it, 9 hour trip or so from where I was at. Had one layover in Japan. Got into Manila, was on another layover, climbed on another plane, had to get a taxi or a ride first to cross Manila to another airport, which was smaller, that wasn't international. Had to wait there and get on another plane and cross the islands. She was on the opposite side of the country. Crossed the islands, got off the plane there. First thing I saw was military standing there with M16s all over the place. I almost said, oops, wrong stop, and got back on the plane. Okay? And there she was. She was outside waiting on me. Climbed in a cab there and took another long drive to the town she was living in. Okay? So, no, I've been here. I've done this. I know. Okay, but as far as Steve Hoga goes, I've had somebody recently, this happened a year or so ago, ask me about being on a podcast with Steve Hoka. They'd like to hear the two of us speaking together again. Okay, well, I personally got nothing against that myself, but it's never been me that's ever stopped that from happening. Ever. The person who's stopping that from happening is Steve himself. If Steve tells you different, Steve would be lying to you. Okay, that's all there is to it. Steve Hoka knows that. It's Steve Hoka that has stopped it from happening. And, I personally have nothing against Steve Hoka. I don't dislike the guy. I just don't approve of the hot-headed temper that the man has, and I think that's probably some of what holds him back. I think in his personal life, I think his temper and his ability to not be able to understand that you got to be able to agree to disagree, which means you're not going to become irate or mad at somebody when you disagree with them. You allow them their opinion, they allow you your opinion. You go on an opinion basis because everybody has a right to their own opinion. And this is an area that I do know from past experience with Steve Hoka that Steve Hoka's had issues with. Does he anymore? I don't know. Could it be a change there? He may have. Do I think he has? I don't want to say yes or no. If I was to go with Mitchell's interviews that I listened to and some of the interviews I've heard spelled through with Mitchell, and knowing Mitchell and talking to Mitchell myself on the phone, and Warren talks to Mitchell quite often himself. So, if I was to go with what Warren would tell me or Mitchell would tell me, then I would have to say that Steve Hoka still has his hot temper. I could be wrong about that. Okay, but if Steve Hoka still has his hot temper, then I would just have to just tell you from what I've seen of that, that is probably Steve's biggest problem. That's probably what holds him back. Okay, that's just my guess. Okay, I'm not saying that's accurate by no means at all, and I'm not here to criticize Steve Hoka. The one thing I will say is the ad hominem attacks that Steve has done, and when Steve comes up and criticizes somebody else for taking down a video, I have to go with what Sane Monks Insanity said 100% across the board because it's so accurate. That is the coffee pot calling the kettle black. 100% the coffee pot calling the kettle black. That was such a joke. Anytime I hear Steve Hoca criticizing anybody for taking down videos, it is one of the biggest jokes you could ever think of. Actually, it's laughable how this guy has the audacity to criticize somebody else for doing something that he does himself. Okay? And that's not putting Steve Hoca down, it's just a factual statement that you cannot criticize somebody else for doing something you do yourself. You're not somehow superior to them, you're not somehow better than them, smarter than them, or anything. You are another human being just like they are. You have a right to do it, so do they. I leave it off with that. I'm not going to say no more on that. Okay? But as far as would I do a podcast again with Steve Hoca? Yeah, I'm willing to do that. I'm not going to do a debate with him because there would be no debating him because Steve Hoca is set in Steve Hoca's ways. And I'm not going to go into this Rothschild Rockefeller stuff because Steve Hoca has brought this up many times in the past. Steve Hoca has done absolutely no research outside of the dating scene. He has absolutely done no research, and he is absolutely asleep to what's going on in today's society. Now, if Steve Hoca wants to tell me he's not asleep, it would be for him to explain to me what's going on in today's society. That's all he'd need to do to show me he's not. But could he do that? I doubt he ever would. Okay, but just the same, I'm going to leave that part go. But if he wants to do a podcast, which I doubt, I know other people have asked me this and they would like to see Steve and I do a podcast together. If Steve Hoca would like to do something together on the dating scene topic only, then I'm game for that and I would be willing to do that, okay? And I wanted to let you know that straight up. I would be willing to do that. Steve Hoca's got a lot of good videos out there and he's done a lot of good work over the years. But once again, I'm going to go back to staying insane amongst insanity because he said something that's very correct that I've tried to tell people myself that are TFLers. You have to remove your mind from the dating scene. I'm not telling you to suffer and be alone, but you have to accept the reality of the situation that you're living, and you have to be able to find something to make yourself happy, to occupy your time, whether it's a hobby, whether it's your job or a career, whether you want to create or build something for yourself. You need to find things to take your mind off the dating scene completely. Because by you focusing on the dating scene, and I can't get somebody, you're destroying yourself. Not only are you destroying yourself, you're sending out body language to females. And you don't even know you're doing it. No lie. You're sending out body language that the females pick up on. They see, they read it. No lie. And it scares them away. Your body language will tell on you. And if you keep your mind in that spot, you're destroying yourself. And you're also sending out the body language when you're out there. You've got to take your mind off it completely, I'm telling you guys. And you've got to be able to put your mind in your own life and find something to make yourself happy with. And occupy your time and not worry about meeting somebody so that when the day comes that if you do meet somebody, you're not all about meeting somebody, you don't care about meeting somebody so that you will be yourself. Because if you feel the pressure, if I got to meet somebody and I got to impress her and I want to do everything right because I really want this date, I want this person, blah, 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 what you're doing is destroying your own chances. Because you destroy yourself, you sound out body language, it scares her off. And, I've said this before to people, but you really got to take me to heart with this one because I'm not lying to you. You want help? There is no instant cure for this problem. This problem came through social engineering of society and it didn't happen overnight. This problem was deliberately put upon us by the powers that be, an area Steve Hoke is not awake to. To actually understand the Fabians and who actually brought these problems onto us and that there was an agenda behind it. It's no accident. It's no different than the Violence Against Women's Act, where the man cannot never ever be a victim of domestic abuse, which is a complete lie. None of these things are accidents. They're deliberate. It's social engineering programming brought to you from the people at the top that are behind this in different family bloodlines for agendas. Basically, what you have when it came to the division of the genders was the feminist movement and the social engineering programming that went along with the feminist movement. Divide and conquer, people. Population reduction. See, what you want to call conspiracy theory is a joke because there's no conspiracy theory about it. It's for real. But for those who do not want to take the time to school themselves or look into anything, you cannot help those who refuse to help themselves. To understand why this is the way it is in today's society, you have to first understand where the problem came from, why the problem's here, how they went about it, and why they done it. Something Steve Hoka said years ago. This came from Steve Hoka. He felt that PUA and CIA had something in common. And to this day, he was correct about that. When you do your homework and you actually study what's really going on, you realize that that was a very correct statement. The problem is Steve never went nowhere with it because he didn't do any homework. If he had actually done his homework, then he'd understand the problem that we're facing in today's society is not going to go away in my lifetime or Steve's lifetime, or most likely yours. Will we ever be able to change it? I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. Because people have to be willing to understand whose bloodline the families behind the social engineering. I would tell you to start with the Fabians. Understanding and studying NWO, New World Order, is a must to understand what's really taking place. You think it's an accident that Karen Stroud, Girls' Rights What, is running a men's rights movement? Do you suppose it's an accident? No, it's not. What has she accomplished? Zero. What did Paul Elam accomplish? Zero. What did they accomplish overall? They showed you the truth to the symptoms. Okay, they showed you Paul Elam actually did some really good work, just like Steve Hogan did, that I will not take away from the man, because he did. And he told you lots of truths, but he never looked for the cause. Just like Karen Stroud. Don't look for the cause. Don't look for the root problem, which is no different than having your car fixed or anything else fixed. If you don't look for the root problem and then your vehicle keeps breaking down or whatever it is, because you're not looking for the root problem that's causing it. I mean, take it to a mechanic who don't look for the root problem and then get mad because they're not fixing your vehicle but they're charging you money. That's your own stupidity because you're taking it to somebody that don't want to look for the root problem. It's no different with this. I gave you hints now if you want to find the root problem. Quit calling NWO a conspiracy theory. They've told you it in your face. Daddy Bush told you it. Clinton told you it. Obama told you it. Do I need to go on with the list of people who actually told you it in your face? And you still keep turning your head to what they said and calling it what you're calling it. You're your own enemy. You don't need enemies. You're doing a great job of being your own enemy. I'm not saying you gotta believe everything, but what I'm telling you to do is look into this stuff for yourself. Sit on a fence. Don't make no judgments on anybody. And start looking for yourself and opening your eyes and paying attention to what's going on around you. That's all I can tell you. As far as the dating arena goes, I do agree with some of what I heard there. The problem ain't going away anytime soon. Okay? And there's only one way I can think of it going away, and I don't know that we can get that done. How many of you people out here have the ability to care about somebody you've never met in your life as much as you care about yourself? I know your answer is going to be you're nuts. You can't do that. And that's exactly why this problem will never go away. Cremation of care. Until you can have the ability to actually care on an individual basis that needs to go viral, global, you will never change nothing. Because all the corruption in the world can happen in your face and you're not going to care. See, this is why it's such a difficult topic, because you know how many people, don't even know TFL is here? And out of the hundreds of thousands of people living it and thousands and thousands that do know it's here, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands that don't. And even people that are living it, that don't even never even heard of it, don't know. Social engineering. Okay? Until people can actually care, it's just like the wars over what's going on over in Yemen right now, just to steal resources. You're killing and stealing in the name of defending your country. You're no better than Adolf Hitler. You're going into somebody else's land that's done nothing to you because you're following your orders and being lied to, and you're believing the lies. This is one of the biggest epidemics we have, is people want to lie. Nobody wants to be honest. But what's funny is nobody wants to be lied to neither. But you can't have it both ways. How you've lost your ability to use critical thinking skills and figure out that you cannot have it both ways is beyond me. But just the same. So addressing Steve Hoca, staying sane amongst the insanity, I had to stand with Sane and sane amongst the insanity because the man's correct. He's not out here lying to people. He's not out here to do harm to anybody. No more than I am. Steve Hoca did do a lot of good work back in the day. Steve Hoca, for whatever reason, it goes through his mind, takes his videos down and comes back, then takes them down again, then comes back, and takes him down again and comes back. I have no idea outside of, like I told you, I got a feeling his temper is controlling him. And if so, it is an issue Steve Hoca, and only Steve Hoca, can correct. But it will also hold him back. It will also contaminate him and stop him from having very much success with his life. And I don't wish that upon Steve. I really don't. I wouldn't wish that upon nobody. Okay, but it's not me. I'm willing to do a podcast with Steve Hoca again if Steve Hoca wanted. So for you people asking me, you better understand I have no problems with doing that. But I can't make that happen. Because it's Steve Hoca that's always been responsible for keeping that from happening. So, if you want to see Steve and I together on a podcast, I mean, I did a recording with Warren not long ago. I've talked to Mitchell a few times, trying to set a date to do a recording with Mitchell and Warren. Okay? And I wouldn't mind doing something with Steve, but I can't do anything with Steve because first Steve has to be willing to break the ice and make the contact, doesn't he? Sure does. And until that happens, it'll never happen. You better understand that. And it's not me stopping it. It's Mr. Hoca himself. Don't let him tell you anything different because he'd be lying to you. And I would hope that he don't come up here and think that I'm attacking him and try to tell you something different because I'm not attacking him. Not at all. And I'm not going to cut through the chase with anything with Steve. I'm only going to tell you that Steve's the reason we haven't done anything together. Until this day, it stays that way. And if something's going to happen, me and Steve's going to do a recording or a podcast, it's going to be because Steve has made the contact with me to say, let's do it. And unless that happens, it ain't going to happen. You need to understand that, okay? And as far as the advice given, it needs to be, you need to understand that for TFLers and incel guys that are looking for a cure, an answer, a solution, the answer and the solution cannot be given. This problem was brought on through social engineering. It was no accident. It was deliberately done. It didn't start overnight. They spent many decades creating this, getting us to where we're at right now. And they're not going to turn it around overnight if you can turn it around. Can it be turned around? I honestly don't know. I can't answer that question for you. The only thing I can tell you is this. If you're living TFL, if you're an incel, you got to try to take heed. Listen to what Sane and Sane's told you. Take the advice I'm just telling you. Listen closely and pay attention. Looks are very critical. Always have been for a long time now, thanks to social engineering. And success, the tool, money. Sad, because it shouldn't be that way. But you wonder why we have so many breakups? You wonder why there's so much corruption and family units destroyed? Because everybody's chasing the wrong things and loving the wrong reasons. You can't feel real love in today's society because nobody knows what they're doing. Because it's not about having success with money. It's not about looks because nobody keeps their looks. I've told people this for years. That you're going down all the wrong roads and that's why you have no success. And that's why the people who do have success never stay together. Have you looked at the divorce rate? Have you looked at the amount of children who have no dad in their life or no mother in their life? Have you looked at the destruction of the family unit? and the family courts. It's no accident. It's because people literally do not know what they're doing anymore. Women and men alike. I'm not going to discriminate. And that is something that can be talked about on a podcast. Okay, but I guess with that, I'm going to get out of here. But I wanted to address this real quick because I've had people asking me, and I'm going to tell them straight up it's not me stopping that from happening, okay? And as far as staying sane amongst insanity, I totally understand him. I'm with him on his decisions, what he does with his life, okay? I think the guy's a very smart man. I've never met him in my life. I appreciate what he has done, but I can tell you this without knowing the guy personally. He's not up here to bullshit you. He really means well, and he's being honest, and he's not bullshitting or lying. He's somebody you can trust. If he gives you his opinion or his advice, it's from his heart. It's what he sees and feels. He's not trying to missteer anybody. Okay? I know that about this man, and I don't even know him personally. I'm telling you, I know this about him. Okay? I'm very thankful for people like him. We need more people like him. As far as Steve goes, he's totally taken staying insane the wrong direction, the wrong way. Okay? He really is, and that's just a sign Steve still has a hot temper. There's nothing I can do about that, man. But I can tell you this, Steve. This is to Steve, okay? If you're still having temper problems and get mad real easy, Steve, the best thing I can tell you is this. Start teaching yourself how to agree to disagree. Allow somebody their own opinion, whether you disagree or not, and move on to another subject. Do yourself a favor and start watching your own temper. Because that anger, Steve, will hold you back. And I've got a feeling, now I'm not in your life to know this for sure, Steve, but I do know this. At one time in my life, I was a very angry person. No lie, fact. That anger would destroy you, Steve, and hold you back. You won't need enemies, Steve. You'll be your own enemy. So you have to get control of that for yourself. Nobody can do that for you. Okay, so that's just a piece of advice to you, Steve, if you still have anger issues. Because for the life of me, I know people have asked you about us two doing a podcast because they've asked me, Steve. Okay, and why do you choose to be so angry with me all this time later? And every time you're angry with me, it's over. I didn't think with your brain because you don't know how to agree to disagree, Steve. Learn how to agree to disagree and stop throwing out harmony attacks at people. You know, when you insult me in a video because you bring up Rothschild's or Rockefeller's names without doing any research yourself, it's actually pretty pathetic. But I'm not going to go there with you, Steve. No, I'm not. I'm going to move on, or I'm going to do my own thing as I've always done, whether you're here or whether you're not. You don't affect me one way or the other, Steve. You've done some great work, and if people want to hear the two of us together talking dating scene topics, I have nothing against that, Steve, and I think it'd be a great thing to do. But then once again, it's not up to me now, is it, Steve? So make your mind up. Either do or you don't. But if you know, don't send them my way and say it's up to me, when you're not going to answer to me. Because I'll tell you what, if you leave a comment under this video, you will get a reply. And if you want personal information on to contact me again, you will get that. All you got to do is ask. With that being said, you have a good one.